The banquet hall shimmered under crystal chandeliers, every table draped in ivory silk and crowned with golden rose arrangements. Soft classical music floated through the air, and the scent of rosemary lamb and truffle mashed potatoes wafted past rows of guests dressed in gowns and tuxedos. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I stood quietly by the dessert table, not daring to touch the silverware. My stomach twisted from hunger, but I clutched my purse tighter and kept my head low. I knew better than to reach for a plate. Not here. Not around them. Don't feed her. She's not even family. My stepmother's voice pierced the room, sharp and disgusted. Forks stopped midair. Heads turned. I froze. Somewhere near the head table, my stepsister Talia laughed and rolled her eyes. My cousins giggled with their mouths full. One of them, Kelsey, picked up a piece of bread and lobbed it at me like I was a stray dog. It hit my shoulder and fell to the floor. The shame burned hotter than the pain. She's lucky we even let her in, my stepmother snapped, wineglass tilted in her hand like royalty. My lips parted, but I said nothing. What could I say? This was my sister's engagement banquet. I'd come in good faith, hoping to show support, hoping to be treated like a human being just once. I looked down at the floor, swallowed hard, blinked away the tears before they could fall. If I gave them the satisfaction of seeing me break, they'd never let me forget it. The hall buzzed again, murmurs resuming like a cruel tide of gossip. She even looks like a burden, someone whispered. I heard she works 2 jobs now, another chuckled. Some kind of cleaning gig. And then, a heavy silence rolled through the entrance. Like a storm had stepped in and pulled all the air with it. The music stopped. Heels clicked against marble as I slowly turned. A jet-black bulletproof Rolls-Royce Phantom had pulled up right outside the glass-paneled entrance. 2 sharply dressed guards opened the door. My husband stepped out. Every conversation died. He wore a black tailored suit with subtle platinum cufflinks, polished shoes, and a face that made even the proudest men shrink in their seats. His name was Dominic Carter, a name most of the world knew, but few had the power to say in his presence. He walked straight through the stunned crowd. Every guest stood frozen, some mouths parted, others clutching their pearls or phones. Dominic's eyes didn't waver once. Not until he reached me. He slid his hand around my waist, lifted my chin gently with his fingers, and said loud enough for the room to echo, "Who dared touch my queen?" The silence cracked. Gasps swept the crowd. Chairs scraped. I swear someone dropped a wine glass. Talia turned pale. My stepmother stuttered. What? Dominic didn't even look at her. "I told you to wait in the car," I whispered to him, embarrassed. His voice lowered, eyes burning with quiet rage. "I saw the bread hit you from the window." That's when the room began to shift. I felt it like a wave beneath my feet. The stares turned desperate, confused. Then horrified. Because that's when the banquet doors opened again, and 4 network journalists came in with cameras. "That's her," one whispered. "The woman from the Tech Foundation story. She's the investor's wife?" I thought she was just some distant cousin. No. I wasn't. I was the silent force behind Carter Holdings' new $900 million clean energy grant. And I was the reason half the companies here were about to survive the economic storm. But none of them had known that. Until now. Dominic took off his coat, draped it over my shoulders, and turned to the guests. "Let's make something clear," he said calmly. "Anyone who insults her, insults me. And if you think tonight's banquet is more valuable than her dignity, you'll learn tomorrow what happens when my patience is tested." I saw Talia sink into her chair, her engagement ring flashing uselessly as she tried to hide her face. Even Kelsey, who had laughed while throwing bread, scooted her chair back, so far she nearly toppled. "Let's go," Dominic whispered, taking my hand. "But this is Talia's." I hesitated. "You've given them too much already," he said. "Now it's their turn to sit in silence." And with every eye on us, we walked out. The cameras followed. The murmurs followed. And I never looked back. Because the next morning, they'd all wake up to a headline they couldn't erase. Dominic Carter's wife publicly humiliated at sister's banquet. Here's how she turned the tables overnight. The next morning, chaos exploded like wildfire. It started with a single article, but it was enough to send the entire city's elite into a tailspin. Carter Holdings to withdraw partnerships with firms linked to a hostile banquet incident. Sources confirm Dominic Carter's wife was the target of verbal abuse at elite function. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls. Emails. Apologies I never asked for. Suddenly, everyone remembered I existed. I sat by the window of our penthouse suite, still in the oversized hoodie Dominic had given me the night before. He stood by the counter, fixing coffee the way he always did. 2 sugars, no questions asked. I didn't want it to go viral, I whispered, staring at the news. He didn't look up. It needed to. I turned to face him. They'll say I used your name for revenge. Dominic met my eyes, calm, firm, steady. You didn't need my name. You had your worth long before they buried it. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted the salt. But there was no time to wallow. Within hours, I received 6 invitations for meetings, 3 urgent voice messages from my stepmother, and a please call me back text from my father, for the first time in 2 years. Talia's wedding planners canceled the sponsorship. Her engagement deal was being questioned. Even her fiancé's family had concerns about image. They were unraveling. But I wasn't done. By evening, I walked into the same hotel where the banquet had been held. This time, not as a ghost. I wore a fitted sapphire blue dress, heels that echoed confidence, and a presence they couldn't ignore if they tried. Dominic stayed back. This was my war to finish. The room went quiet when I entered the hotel's executive lounge. They were already there, my stepmother, my father, Talia, Kelsey, and a few family members who used to call me the leftover kid. Talia stood. Her mascara had run dry hours ago. I didn't know he was your husband. I tilted my head. Would it have mattered? Silence. My father cleared his throat, forcing a laugh. We were just caught off guard. You should have told us you'd married up. I narrowed my eyes. Is that what it would have taken to earn your decency? He shifted. That's not what I meant. No, I interrupted. You meant exactly what you said last night. That I wasn't family. Kelsey scoffed. Come on. It was just a joke. No one meant to actually hurt you. I walked forward, slowly, every step measured. You threw food at me like I was a dog. Talia looked down. I was under pressure. People were watching. You're only sorry because people kept watching this morning, I snapped. They didn't expect that. They still thought I'd crumble the way I used to. But they had no idea. I was no longer that girl begging for a chair at their table. You told the world I wasn't family, I said, voice calm but lethal. So, don't ask me to clean your mess now. My stepmother finally stood, eyes pleading. We were wrong. I'll say it. But don't punish Talia for one night. You don't know what the press is doing to her. I know. I cut in. They're giving her a fraction of what she gave me for years. My hands trembled slightly, but I didn't let them see. Then I took out a folder and placed it on the table. What's this? My father asked. Ownership papers, I said. This hotel. The banquet hall. The new startup Talia's fiancé invested in last month. He looked up sharply. I bought them. Quietly. Over the past 2 years. You didn't know, because you never looked close enough. My stepmother's face lost all color. That's not possible. You never asked what I'd been doing, I said. You only saw the part you thought was worth mocking. My voice cracked, but not from weakness. From release. I turned to leave. Talia called after me. So, what now? You'll erase us. I paused at the door. No. I'll let you sit with the version of me you created. And wonder, every day, what would have happened if you just handed me a plate instead of throwing bread. Then I left. Back in the rolls, Dominic didn't say a word. He just reached for my hand, intertwined our fingers, and kissed my palm. You were terrifying, he smiled. I finally let the tears fall. But this time, they weren't from pain. They were from the kind of power no one could steal again. The next morning, I didn't wake up to silence. I woke up to Talia's crying voice on a voicemail. Please don't ruin everything. I know I was horrible, I know. But you're my sister. We grew up together.
No.
We didn't. We existed under the same roof, but we weren't raised the same. I was the forgotten one. The maid in their mansion, cleaning her dresses before banquets, like the one that broke me. Now she needed mercy. And for once, I didn't feel guilt for having none. I walked into my old workplace just after noon, a non-profit I used to clean at night when money was tight. I still visited sometimes. It grounded me. Clara? Ms. Ramos, the director, blinked. Is that you? I nodded and smiled. They didn't know about the articles or the headlines. To them, I was still just me. And I liked that. I left a signed envelope with a 7-figure donation on her desk before I walked out. Then I got into the car, where Dominic was already reading something on his tablet. He didn't look up. Your father's law firm called me this morning. They want to mediate. I raised an eyebrow. Why? They're scared you'll take the hotel public and name them in your story. I laughed once, bitter and short. They still think it's about revenge. He looked over. Isn't it? I turned to the window. It's about memory. I want them to remember what they did every time they look at a bread roll or a banquet table. That night, Talia showed up at our building. Security didn't let her through, but I saw her on the monitor. She had makeup streaks down her cheeks, holding a gift bag like it could undo what she'd done. She's been standing there for an hour, the guard said. Should I send her away? I hesitated, then shook my head.
No.
Let her stand. It's her turn to wait in the cold. The following week, our family's group chat resurrected. My father wrote, "We made mistakes. Let's fix this before it's too late." I typed back, then deleted it. Some wounds don't want closure. They want space. Instead, I called the hotel's event manager and told him to donate Talia's unused banquet credits to a charity for abused girls. He hesitated. You sure you want to do that? Yes, I said. Let someone else wear the crown for once. A few days later, Dominic and I had dinner on the rooftop of our building. No staff. No cameras. Just the two of us and the city lights. You've been quiet, he said, pouring sparkling water into my glass. I've been thinking, I replied, about my mother. His face softened. He knew I never talked about her. She died when I was 12, I said quietly. And the moment she did, I became nothing. My stepmother came in and made sure I knew I was just an extra mouth. A charity case. Dominic reached for my hand, but I kept going. My mother used to tell me something when I was little. The world won't see your worth until you stop begging them to. I didn't understand it back then. Now I do. He looked at me for a long moment. You want to do something in her name, don't you? I nodded. A women's shelter. Something that lasts. Not a revenge move. A legacy. Dominic smiled. I'll back it. No, I said. I want it to be mine. He laughed. Then I'll stay out of your way. Later that week, a courier dropped a thick envelope at our door. I recognized the handwriting immediately, my father's. Inside was a typed letter. Apology. Regret. The usual. But behind it was something else. A small photo, yellowed at the corners. My mother, younger than I'd ever seen her, holding a baby. Not me. There was handwriting on the back. Our first daughter. I wish I could have raised her right. Signed my stepmother's name. I froze. Dominic noticed my face change. What is it? I handed him the photo. He stared. Is that? My half-sister. I whispered. She was born before I ever knew them. Given up. Never spoken about. My chest tightened. All these years, they threw me away for not being one of them, and they erased their real daughter completely. I didn't confront them. I didn't need to. Instead, I did something better. I found her. Her name was Hannah Monroe. She was living 2 states away, working as a preschool teacher, unaware of the storm that once surrounded her birth. When we met, I didn't tell her everything. Just enough. That she had a sister. That I came to say hello, not to drag her into drama. She cried when I hugged her. No one had ever called her family before. And somehow, that moment healed more than any apology ever could. 2 weeks later, I walked into the exact same ballroom where I'd once been humiliated. Not as a guest. Not as someone sneaking past the buffet line, ignored and insulted, but as the keynote speaker. It was a women's empowerment summit, sponsored by multiple corporations, including Dominic's company and several foundations I now funded. The organizers had asked me to speak on resilience. They didn't know the full story, but I did. As I stepped up to the stage in a sleek white pantsuit, I could feel the eyes. All of them. Some remembered me. Most didn't. That didn't matter. I adjusted the mic, heart pounding, not from fear, but from knowing what this moment meant. There was a time I stood in this very room. I began, voice steady, and couldn't get a plate of food. Heads turned. Not because I was late. Not because I didn't belong at the event, but because someone decided I wasn't worth feeding. The room went still. But today, I said, smiling faintly, I'm not here to name names. I'm here to remind you that your worth is never decided by the people too blind to see it. Applause broke out. Not slow or uncertain, genuine. I walked off stage to a standing ovation. Backstage, Dominic pulled me into a hug. You did it, he said. You owned the room. But something bigger was waiting. That night, as I walked out of the hotel, a familiar face emerged from the shadows. Talia. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her designer dress clung to her like dead weight. No cameras. No smiles. Just her and shame. I watched your speech, she said, voice hoarse. I was in the back. I nodded once. Okay. She looked up at me, eyes trembling. Why didn't you ever hate me? You had every reason to destroy me. I hesitated, then answered honestly. Because I used to be you. She flinched. I used to want approval so badly, I hurt people just to feel taller. You taught me what I never want to become. Talia started to cry. I lost everything. I know, I said gently. That's the only reason you're here. She looked stunned. I continued. But it's also the only reason I finally see you. She bit her lip. Do you think there's a way back from this? I shook my head. Not to what you had, but maybe toward who you could be. I handed her the name of the women's shelter I was building. Volunteer. Start from the floor you helped me fall to. Maybe then we can speak again. Weeks passed. Then months. Life didn't just heal, it blossomed. The women's shelter opened under my mother's name, Eleanor's Place. The press called it a beacon of second chances. We staffed it with survivors, former addicts, and girls who had nowhere to go but up. Hannah, my newly found sister, became the child therapy lead. I visited often. Not as a savior. Not as the boss. Just Clara, a woman who used to be voiceless, now surrounded by voices of hope. One day, my stepmother showed up. I wasn't expecting her. She didn't ask to come inside. She just stood outside the glass doors of Eleanor's Place, watching the kids play in the courtyard. I stepped out. We locked eyes. She looked older now. The years had weighed heavily on her. Maybe it was the guilt. Maybe it was knowing her empire of pride had collapsed the moment she threw bread instead of kindness. I came to say, she began, but her voice cracked. You don't need to say anything, I interrupted. She looked relieved. And crushed. I just needed to see it, she whispered. What you built. I nodded. You could have ruined us, she said. But instead, I gave you the silence you once gave me, I said. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. She turned to leave. Wait, I said. One question. She paused. Why me? I asked. Why was I the one you treated like a stain? She turned slowly, her lips trembling. Because you reminded me of the girl I was before I learned to hate myself. That answer hit deeper than any insult ever had. I let her walk away, and didn't chase her. That night, I sat on the balcony of our penthouse, barefoot, wrapped in a warm blanket. Dominic brought me tea, kissed my temple, and said nothing. He didn't have to. The city below glittered like stars had fallen just for me. Once upon a time, I was a girl standing at the edge of a banquet, starving, ashamed, invisible.
Now?
Now, I was the table. I didn't need revenge. I had something better.
Peace.
And they, every last one of them, had to live knowing the woman they called not family became the one person they could never ignore again.